for being back for this session, special conversation with Margéry Sيmكين. Margéry is a casting director, as you see, and it's going to be moderated by Gula Hassan, who's a famous screenwriter from Paris. So please give a warm welcome to Margéry and Gula. Thank you.
Today we are with Margéry Sيmكين. I would like to start this by talking about, so today we're revealing basically the secrets of casting with the amazing Margéry Sيmكين and her amazing vast experience. So one of the main elements of success of any film is the choice of talents, we all know that. And it really comes down to determine the success of any project. Casting the right talent is not an easy job. It's definitely fun, but it's not easy. And this is like our opening. You must have the right vision to cast the right talent. And from her amazing past experience, it's clear that Miss Margéry not only had the right vision every time, but also she had accumulated an amazing experience doing so. So today we'd like to explore some of those secrets with you. Welcome, Margéry.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start by asking you about your general impression of the festival. Was it anything like you imagined?
It was nothing like I imagined. I'm completely blown away by being here. I had no idea how enormous it was to begin with. You know, I've gotten lost in this hotel multiple times now already, as I'm sure some of you have. And it's just fantastic. I mean, I think it's, you know, others have talked about this, but the energy, can you hear me? I can put this down here. This is why I'm behind the camera, not in front of the camera. And I'm just the energy and the excitement and honestly the promise of here. You know, when you're at home, it feels, oh my God, is everyone waking up? Why is this so late? Wait, I have to do the DMD thing, right? But I need this as reference, sorry. I know, clearly I don't do this. The energy is so palpable, really, and really, at home you feel like everyone's disappointed and frustrated, and we talk a lot about the death of cinema, and you know, what the next thing is. And to me, it's a little bit about delivery systems, you know, I don't know, what is cinema, what is not cinema, and you know, we can talk about that a little bit later in terms of casting, as I really would like to do that. But here you feel like there's an incredible energy. I mean, I was here with Terry Gilliam the last couple of days, and walking around, he just kept saying, everyone's so young, and you don't feel that way when you're home. You feel like everyone's kind of old and tired. So I thank you for the energy.
That's wonderful. I actually forgot, we would like to ask about the audience before we begin.
Yeah, no, one of the things, yeah, I mean, one of the things I like to do, and I hope it's okay, whatever. I'm not going to do this the way I usually do this. I'm not going to only talk to Roland, I'm going to talk to all of you too. I would love to know who I'm talking to. So how many of you are, and you can raise your hand multiple times. How many of you are filmmakers? Oh, a lot. Okay, good. How many of you are performers?
Talents.
Yes, and how many of you are writers? Okay, we've got a lot of everything, or a lot of people doing everything. And you know, certainly that's you know, one of the exciting things that you can do at a place like this, you know, more than I feel like, again, at home you're pigeonholed. And when I say home to me is America, but also, London, we've sort of been mushed together, and there are very much distinctions between probably, but I'm really talking about the English-based markets,
Yeah.
and it's hard to be a multiple, a hyphenate there, and you may start out as that, but then people are going to want to have you do one or the other, much more than I think in emerging markets. So, it's exciting, but I also believe it's important to find your place, to find your strengths, because the truth is, we're all better at something than something else. Everybody isn't everything. It doesn't mean you can't do everything. I was a studio executive for 3 years. Yeah, right.
Amazing.
I was a senior vice president of development at 20th Century Fox. I still have the stationery. You end up with a lot of stationery, just things that you then can't use. My grocery lists are all still years later on Fox stationery. But I was good at it. I was okay at it. I'm smart enough that I can read a script. I read it from a certain. I'm going to go all over the place too.
Please.
I need a volunteer over here. Somebody in this section. Somebody raise your hand. Come on. Okay. Your job, if I go in a direction, because I can see you, that starts to make no sense at all. You don't have to, he doesn't need a mic, he just needs to wave your hand, and that means I'm lost, and I've lost the plot. Because I do that. I will start one sentence over here and then go over there, but I'll get back. There's a point. There's always a point. I just can't always remember what the point was that I was starting to talk about. So, see, here I go. But I was a studio executive. There you go. Thank you. I was a studio executive, and I was good at it, but I'm very good at what I do. So I kind of went back to what I'm very good at, because in the end, honestly, trust me, it's more fun to do what you're very good at than what you're good at.
That takes me to a question that's not
it's not on there?
No,
Okay, go.
But I would love to ask it.
Yes.
You just mentioned that a person has to go through or try at least all the positions, let's say, or roles in order for them to know exactly what they're good at. Was that what you meant?
No, I just meant that I think in emerging markets there's a tendency, look, you have to, you're trying to get something done, you're trying to express yourself creatively. So you don't know yet what your medium is, right? You don't know if you're a performer, a writer, or a director, a producer. You don't know that yet. So you may have, and in order to get something done, you may have to do multiple things.
Try and
do other things, and then you find it. Or you may know. I mean, I think there's, I hate to get reductive here, but there's almost, I've always felt there are two kinds of people in the world. There's the people that know passionately, they've known their whole life they want to be a singer. They have to sing. No matter, if you didn't let them sing for a living, they'd be singing or a musician. They'd be doing that all the time. And then there's the rest of us. I had no idea what I was going to do at all. And
wow.
And here I am.
You actually all of that and you didn't even know.
I didn't know. I didn't even know my job existed until I started doing it. I didn't know there was such a thing. Because when you're, and again, I think people know more now about, and certainly all of you, because you've been studying or making or thinking about making, you know what the different jobs are. I didn't know what the different jobs were. I just knew about directors, writers, I think vaguely producers, whatever they do. I'm still not sure totally, always. I think more than any other term, job description in our business, I'm going to say producer means 1,000 things. I'm forever working on projects, and people come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm a producer on this project," and I've never heard of them, I've never seen them, they've had nothing to do with it. And then there are people who are actually making something happen, which is when I started, I worked with some really, really great producers, and they helped shape the thing and support the filmmakers and, bring the thing into fruition. And now it can mean, one person handed the script to somebody else, or my favorite. Here are all my prejudices. These are going to be the headlines, the offending headline. Here I go already. I know, I warned my friends, I'm going to say something there. Stop. But, it's the producers that have projects, and then they don't happen, but they somehow had touched the project, right? And then the project goes on to somebody else who actually makes it, but they still get to be producers on the project. And I'm going, wait, what?
Everyone's getting a producer.
Everybody, you know,
Funny.
and which I find really upsetting because there are great producers who, you know, deserve the credits and make things happen. And anyway, that's something for a producer.
Yeah.
Let's get back to casting.
Great.
See, I told you should have been waving.
So, I mean, there's a million questions that I'd love to ask. According to your amazing experience, you helped shaping like the film industry everywhere, even in Hollywood, because you did help create these rising stars, these A-stars that we watch right now, and they were like in the first of your films, and you casted, you made these choices. So it's wonderful talking to you about this. I'd like to ask, how did your unique start in the casting world influence your approach in the talent selection?
How did you start?
Yeah. How did it affect your approach in the business?
Look, I didn't know what I was doing, so I think sometimes when you don't know well enough, you don't know what to do, what you're doing, you can sometimes make bolder choices. I often wonder now if I would have done a lot of the things that I did at first. You become oddly more cautious the farther along you go. Sometimes, you know, you don't know any better, and so you think, why not? You know, why can't I call that person? And why can't I call that agent? And sometimes just your energy and your passion. I also want to say that it was a very different time. It was a much kinder, gentler, smaller world. I started in New York, which is much smaller than LA. And so you kind of you either knew who everybody was, or you knew how to get to somebody, or you knew somebody who was working for somebody who could get to somebody, you know, so you kind of made your way through it all and had access. But mostly I remember on the first film that I worked on other movies, again, by accident. I mean, my career, if there had been, this will be unimaginable for you guys, okay? So there was a time when Xerox machines, you would have to put in page by page, and they didn't collate. They didn't, you know, put together things. So my first job in film was typing. There wasn't a computer, so I was a really good typist. I know all those prejudices against people typing. I don't know how you guys use computers and don't know how to properly type. It's a mystery to me, but it's, you know, I typed crewless, and I had a big job in the nonprofit world before this, and somebody called me, and first of all, I was paid on this movie as much as I was for like running something in nonprofit, for being the person who was typing and Xeroxing. But what I did was I made an extra copy of everything I Xeroxed, and I took it home and read it. And that's how I learned and I worked in the office, which I know everybody has this fantasy, young filmmakers, I want to work on the set. Well, if you work on the set, you're in New York, you're holding back traffic and getting coffee. If you work in the office, you're hearing everything that's going on in the movie. Now, it's a little harder now with email. You don't hear as much. You know, you can't eavesdrop on the conversations the same way. But it was, you know, the non-collating, that was my start. And I kind of accidentally ended up doing casting, which in a way, again, I think is, somebody wanted me to talk about this, and I do want to talk about it. The first movie, and then that led to me working on Fame and finding a lot of the non-actors, was essentially what we call location casting, where I was going into schools, talking my way into schools, something you also cannot do anymore these days. But I went into all of these elementary schools and high schools in New York, and I would go to, for little kids, I find you don't go to the acting class. You go to the acting class and you get the kids that are, they're like this, you know, they all want to be actors and they're singing, and that is less interesting to me on film because it seemed too big, right? So I would go to gym classes, because what happens when you watch kids play sports, you see, here's a secret, watch kids play sports and you see the dynamic between them. You see who the leaders are. You see who the interesting kid is who's sitting by the side. You see things about the kids' personalities. And the truth about casting little kids is you need them to be versions of themselves. You know, they're not going to suddenly turn into another character, for the most part. There are always exceptions to this, but I'm saying for the most part. And then your job as a filmmaker, I think, is to create a comfortable set where the kid feels comfortable playing, right? So if you do that, then you're going to get the best version of the kid. So I was basically doing location casting for kids for this first movie I was hired on. And I got the job because a friend wanted a better job. And so she called me in desperation one day and said, can you go in and lie and tell them that you've been working with me? So I got my first job lying, which is another key to getting it. And then the casting director, there was an actual casting director on that film, not me. And he was working on this other film, and he told the filmmaker, you know, there's this girl, and she found these kids, and you know, maybe she can find people for us. That was a film called The Wanderers, and I, oh my God, I would hang out in schoolyards in Italian neighborhoods. I know, again, something else you could not do now, right? I know. Oh gosh. Okay, you guys dying? Am I like I'm screwed now, right? And in fact, at one point, I was like walking up and down this street, you know, just lurking. And every afternoon, I would go, and then I'd go up to the kids who looked good. It's true. And then this very large, very scary-looking Italian guy came out. This is all these cliches about, you know. And I was in Little Italy in New York, and what did I know? I didn't know. And this guy comes in, and they call me into the Italian. It was straight out of God, you know, of Goodfellas. You know, it was just like that. And I mean, the guy didn't have a crooked nose, but it was like that. And he was this tiny guy, right? Everybody around him was really big, and they were like, "Who are you, and what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on this movie, and we're looking for, you know, kids for these gangs, for you know, for the." And he knew the book. It was based on a book. And he said, "Oh, my nephew wants to be an actor." So all of a sudden, if I would interview the nephew, right, he would you know, they would help me. And then he started introducing me to other godfathers, like all around New York. So that became my incredible in. And I went up to the Bronx, and I met all these guys up there, and I found all of these fantastic kids to be.
That's absolutely wonderful. It's so hard casting kids, by the way. Like,
well, these guys were teenagers, but but it's the great thing about kids is if you give them permission, they just give it to you. You know what I mean? It's about giving them permission. And for the auditioning of kids, there's no point in doing, especially the tiny ones. I mean, they can't read. They can't read well enough to really give you a performance, but you improv with them, and you see who takes direction and who, you know, what if it's this and what if it's that. But mostly it's about making if you make it safe and you have the right kid and they have the personality traits that you need for the character, then
and if you have an amazing casting director as well.
But
you know, that's what it takes.
Well, I mean, look, I do think that I don't really understand. You know, we all have talent. I really do believe everybody has talent, but we don't all have the same talent, right? I have a friend. She comes to my house a couple months ago, and she looked at my living room, and I knew it wasn't great, right? And she just moved a couple of couches, and suddenly the space was great. So I have a good enough eye to tell the difference between not so good and really good, right? But I don't know how to make that happen. I can read a script and see it's not great, but I can't tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
While you know, a really good producer, a studio executive, they can help you, or an editor of a book. You know, we all can discern, but I think that we all have particular areas of strength, and part of it, I have this. It turned out that I have this weird ability to be able to essentially, okay, here's another good one. So I think every character in the script has a purpose. And if they don't have a purpose, they don't belong in your movie, right? And I mean everybody. So as an example, two people are sitting having, two men are having a conversation in a restaurant. A pretty girl and one guy is sort of distracted. And a pretty girl goes by and he turns and looks, we all, the audience, can see he's looking at her, he's not really in the conversation. So her purpose is to distract him. It's not a big part, but it's important that we as the audience understand why he looked at her. I mean, it's a cliche, it's all of those things, but if she's not attractive in some way that we, the audience, can immediately understand, she's not serving her purpose. So that's like a really tiny, tiny example. Obviously, most characters, it's more elaborate. I also believe that every actor, and this is not about typecasting, because lots of different types of people can be that character, right? But there are people that just don't fit. We have a silly line we say in my office, they don't fit the suit. That's what we say to each other. Okay, great actor, don't fit the suit. So, I often say when people are auditioning, the agents will call and say, how did it go? And I go, they're just not what we need.
Yeah.
Well, what did they do wrong? Can they do it again? They didn't do anything wrong. They're just not right for that part. And any actor who says, I'm an actor, I can do anything, is full of it. It's just not true. But it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're not what I need. And it may not be what they want to hear,
Yeah.
but there's nothing you can do about that.
Definitely. I actually want to go back to the point you just mentioned about having a character and having a purpose of that character, because usually that's the case. Like whenever we submit any kind of script or whatever, or we go through it and we find a couple of characters, this is the main question that gets asked. Like, why can't we mix these two characters and make them one if they're both doing the same thing? If we have one guy and two sisters,
Right.
so what's the purpose of each and every character? If there isn't, then there's absolutely no reason to have them.
And as a filmmaker, you need to have a point of view, right? You need to have and you need to have answers. Everybody, each of us who has a part to play, every department head, right? So, I have a friend who's a line producer, and he says that we all see the world according to our department, right? So we all come into him and we go, oh my God, I need more money for this, and this is more important than anything else. But I am going to say, very arrogantly, because I'm sitting on the stage, I get to do this, right? That if you see a movie, I think the script and the cast are the most important thing. If you see a movie and it is in my cinematography, and I have lots of friends who are production designers and costume designers, and I admire them all, and they do beautiful, wonderful work. But if you see a movie and it's a great written script, and it has terrific performances, and the rest of it is just okay, it can't be bad. If it's so bad it distracts you, you're screwed again. But if it's just okay, and those other two things are strong, you'll leave the cinema thinking, or watching the show, whatever medium it's in, that was good. That touched me. That moved me. That did the thing that it was asking me to do. But if you see something and it's all cinematography and action and everything else, and the script is lousy and the performances are terrible, that movie stinks. It just does.
That's so true.
And I think one of the things, among the many things I admire about Jim Cameron, who I get to work with, is that he really knows in the end that the story and the performances, he's incredible with actors in a way that I think people don't fully understand. Oh, now I have to tell my Michelle Rodriguez story, right? What? You're like, oh no. It's a good one. I'm not.
Go ahead.
So when we were working on the first Avatar, there was the part of this pilot, and I said, what is it female, is it male, or what do we want to do? And he said, no, I thought it should be a woman. I said, great. and I give him a list of ideas, and it was a very small part. And he said, well, you know, how do you see it? And he said, I really see a Michelle Rodriguez type. And then we made a list of some people, and he went, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. I just keep seeing a Michelle Rodriguez type. And I said, why are we asking Michelle Rodriguez to do this? And he said, well, she'll never do it at such a time apart. And he does this all the time, where I'll go, you know, maybe we can get so-and-so to do this. And he goes, no, they'll never do it. It's, you know, he's a real fanboy. You know, he really is. And I find it really charming that he always thinks he's not going to be able to get these, big stars, and they're all desperate to be in one of these movies, you know, but lots are. And he always thinks it's not going to happen. And of course, as you know, Michelle said yes and came in and did it. And I think had a really good time. But, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what you were just saying, I noticed this in this version of the Red Sea Film Festival. There are a lot of really good features. The main thing that people speak about, when I'm walking in the garden or wherever, is about the cast. They're like, have you seen that girl in that role? Usually, that is the first thing that people would speak about. That's what they relate to. So it's a very important aspect.
Well, I do think it's the thing that touches your heart.
Definitely.
You know? And if you get it wrong, look, weirdly, if something is well written, the leads are the easy part for us. It doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get a big star. It doesn't mean, but you'll be able to get someone good, to be able to do it if it's well written.
I have a question. So if it's well written, does that mean that the script has to define every aspect of the character that you're casting, or just like a general vision, or you get to do that vision or envision it within?
Look, I think every script there are lots. Everybody makes these shiny. What are they called? The things you make with all the pictures of when you're pitching your pitch deck, right? The pitch deck, huh? Sizzle reel and pitch deck and all those kind of things. That's like, but because I don't think actors really. No, that probably means something for raising money. I know it has a purpose, but in terms of casting, actors always want to see the material. They want to see the script. They want to see what they're going to be asked to say or do. Because the smarter actors honestly understand it's not about how many lines you have, it's about what your character is. Helen Mirren once told me that the first thing she does when she looks at a script, she doesn't care how big the part is, she looks at their last scene. She wants to know what people are going to think of that character as they leave it. And then if the last scene is good, then she'll go back and read the rest of it.
That's very smart.
Which I thought was pretty smart. I don't know how many other people do. I've never heard of anybody else doing it, but I thought it was pretty cool. But your script it has to read like a good novel. It has to read well. And there has to be enough description that somebody can imagine and understand what it is. And it doesn't mean that everything that's in the script is going to end up in the movie. But in order to, because as we all know, you get into production and things get cut and things get changed and, all of that stuff happens. But it is for me, if I read a script, you asked me at one point what makes me take things that to do. And at this point, I want to be able to be value added, and I want to be able to know that I can sell it. Doesn't mean someone else can't, but if I don't read something and I understand how to sell that project in my brain, the way my brain works, then I can't really do my best version of my job. So there has to be enough in there that you understand what the movie's going to be, and there has to be, you can't just say this is a lead part, this is an important part. If there isn't an interesting character for somebody to play, then people may not want to play it, right? Yeah. So there has to be something about it. And again, I've read wonderful scripts where I've seen it in my brain, and then I see the movies and they're fantastic, but they're not at all what I saw in my brain. And that's delightful, but I'm not a filmmaker. But I have to be able to see something and understand how I can talk to representatives, agents, and managers and stuff. But it doesn't mean, let me tell a blue ball story now. I got stories. I had stories.
Storyteller.
The blue bell. So the blue bell, you know, I'm trying to remember what the movie was, and it was, I'm pretty sure it was one of Terry's movies. And I was walking by the prop department one day, and there were like 30 blue balls. And I said, why are there 30 blue balls? And the prop master said to me, well, you know, in this description of this house, it said in the middle of the table was a blue bowl. And I wanted to give Terry options. And so I had 30 blue bowls. And I thought, that makes no sense. It doesn't matter if it's a blue bowl or a green bowl or a red bowl, but it's important that it said blue bowl in the script. Because when you're reading the script and you read blue bowl, it gives it texture. It's like when you're reading a good novel. So you may put things in, but then you have to remember to tell the prop guy that doesn't need to be blue bowl. Let me just say that, you know. Or it doesn't, you know, it'll say this character is blonde and da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, you don't necessarily need someone that's blonde. It's just descriptive. It doesn't mean that if it's not a story point that the bowl is blue or the actor is blonde, you don't have to do that thing, right? But you have to have those things in the scripts in some ways so that it reads well, or some version of that.
Of course. So if you think a casting director would be involved from, like, is it preferable that they be involved from the beginning of the project? Like, as a writer, I would never be able to choose the right cast. Like, even if I could imagine the character, but I wouldn't know who would do it best.
Right, well, that's the job. I mean, I'm usually the first person hired, you know, on things. Me and a line producer doing a budget, right? So, and then we start our little battle.
We've got budget.
Come on, are you kidding? You're only giving us this much? You'll never get, you know, what do you think? Because we're all negotiating all the time. I mean, I got into this business because I used to work in nonprofit, and I thought, I want to work in the profit world where I don't have to beg for money. Guess what? I begged for money. Big disappointment.
That's wonderful. So, okay, so I love this conversation. I'm sorry I want to ask this very tough question, but I would love to know, like, what was some of the hardest moments in your career? Because I think, like, the hard moments are really the teaching curves or like the turning points that turn us into good filmmakers or God.
You know, I told you I'm not good with any specifics.
I know.
Anything that ends in EST, what is this? You know,
okay,
like really,
some of
you know, I mean, look, the hard moments are the disappointments. You know, I try very hard when I read a script not to imagine a specific person. You know, because if I imagine a specific person and then they're not available, I can't afford them, I can't convince them, honestly, I go into mourning. It's like, I get so despondent and it's really hard for me to imagine. And I've only done this a couple of times, and I'm lucky enough that in those times I was able to, and it wasn't always somebody famous. I mean, I worked on a movie, I would guarantee you pretty much no one in this, I would be shocked if any of you have seen this movie. It's called Baby, It's You. It was a early John Sayles movie.
No one, that's fun.
Okay.
Oh,
there you go. So Vincent Spano, why did I know him? I just knew him from around New York. Again, it was really small, you know, it's kind of small world. You know, he might have come in for fame or something. And I read the script and I just saw him. And, you know, Vincent Spano, the Italian guy from Little Italy, was at that time in, I think, Morocco, shooting, something like the Black Star, some movie. Does anybody remember what it was? Here we go. Researcher, Ozzy, you're on. Some movie, he was on location, and John didn't really know him, and I said, I'm telling you, this is the guy. And we kept auditioning all these other people, including Tom Cruise, for that, really, yeah, there you go. I'm pretty sure that was a long time. And I know he was in that office at one point for something. And nobody was nailing it, and I kept saying, do you remember? Did you guys figure out what it is? No, you can't find it. Vincent Spano, come on, guys.
Black Stallion.
Black Stallion, thank you very much. I was going to say that, and I thought, oh, no. So playing a Mina character, I'm going to say something that would not happen today. But we sent him the script. Somehow we got the script to him, and he was going to put himself, again, there was no videotape, nobody had video cameras, so he went around to the camera department, and he got all the short ends, and he glued them together, and Jodie Phelan, I think, was the actress, and she did the scene opposite him, so they audio taped the scene on a cassette recorder, and they sent that to us, and then he did the scene without sound on the short ends, so he could be seen, and we were waiting, and they were trying to ship it, and they kept saying, we have to cast this part, we have to cast this part. I'm like, no, we can't cast him yet, we're not there, it's not good enough, I'm telling you we have to wait for this guy. And then I think Scorsese was like down the hall, and Thelma Schumacher, I remember she had like a Steenbeck, the old editing machines, and she put on the short end glued together thing of Vincent Spano, and John Sayles watched it, and then we listened on a little tape recorder, sort of out of sync, but enough that you could get the idea.
Creative way to cast.
And then he got the part, and he was, so that was the one time more than anything, I just was like, I was practically laying my body in front of, the phone so they wouldn't send someone else, because I knew it was the right thing. But, when you can't get the one you dream of, then it gets really hard. So those are the hard moments.
Well,
but I can't think of a specific. I could only think of a good version.
I mean, that's exactly.
Look at me being positive.
That's amazing. That leads into another question that's not in here, but some people, when they write a script or a story, they actually base it off someone. Like, they have someone in mind, this one character. And usually, if they cannot find that character or that actor, like, is busy or doing something else, the whole project falls apart because it was built
on that.
for this one person.
And I always think,
particular.
look, if you have a story to tell, then you've got to figure out a way to tell it that gives you the flexibility to get it made, in my opinion. And you have to learn, I'm going to use that terrible word that everybody hates in film, compromise, right? I mean, and I know, no, right? But let me put it this way, more positive, right? It's about choices, okay? So you have to learn to make choices, and sometimes you're surprised, right? And there's I don't think enough is said about surprise or things that happen by accident. I mean, some of the best casting I've ever done, one of again, you're not necessarily going to know this actor, but in Beverly Hills Cop, the guy that's sort of the baddie is this avant-garde theater director, actor named Steven Berkoff. And the way he financed his art was essentially doing some commercial things. And I was on the plane, and again, you're not going to be able to imagine this, you guys, but there was a time when you could only see one movie at a time on an airplane. And everybody had a little screen, and you'd go to the bathroom, and you'd turn around, and you'd walk back to your seat, and every screen, right, had the same image on it. And I was doing that very thing, and all of a sudden, Steven Berkoff comes up, and I thought, oh my God, he would be perfect for this part. And if I had peed a little bit earlier or later, he might not have been okay, because he barely had an agent, and and that happens by accident, so there's all these things that happen.
That's wonderful.
That happen by accident, that can enhance your project. So sometimes making choices that aren't the thing you hoped for originally can end up being a blessing and a gift, right? And you end up with something that you hadn't imagined would be. And so you have to leave space for, it sounds like a contradiction, but it's really all part of it. You have to leave space for the accidents, leave space for the spontaneity, and yet still have a point of view. Because, and the job, my job is, does it make sense? Or here's one that sort of speaks to the big financing question, if you're saying, okay, we need a star of a certain level so we can get your movie financed. Well, you know, maybe you can get somebody because somebody knows somebody, but they're really wrong for the film. And I'm not saying don't have a big star. I'm saying you have to start to really assess. You've got a list of 10 names, like X company will make it with one of these 10 people, right? And it's always a chicken and egg. They always ask me for a list, and I always go, I don't want to give you a list. Tell me who you're willing to finance the movie with, and then I'll help everybody figure out how to get one of those people. Because who counts in this market is different than counts in Germany, and is different than counts in South Africa. You know, whoever's giving you the money will have a different idea about who counts. But in the end, if you don't have someone who's good and right for your project, or who can do your project, then you're going to end up with a lousy movie that's financed and nobody's going to see it, you know, or it's not going to go anywhere. And on the other hand, I do want to talk about, and I know how hard it is. So I'm not saying, you know, only make it with your best friend because you wrote it for your best friend. And you know, I mean, there are the famous stories like Sylvester Stallone holding out to, you know, to be in Rocky, and there will always be those stories. But I also understand the practicality on the other side. I mean, but I'm going to say it, my favorite movie so far this year, and I haven't seen every movie yet, so my favorite movie in the American market is a movie called Past Lives, that some of you may have seen. And I love it because, to me, it's a filmmaker using cinema to tell a story. I think you have to know what your story is and how you're going to tell it, and it has to be something that needs to be told. When I say film, I mean some recorded medium, right? So if it doesn't need to be told there, if it's two people in a room talking, then maybe it should be a play, or maybe it should be a short story. You know, different. And if you adapt those things, there's a novella, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and a really, really good exercise that I always tell filmmakers is to read the novella, read the play, and look at the movie. They are all the same story, told honoring each of those different mediums. And it's a really just handy exercise to see. If you're going to tell something on cinema, or if you see a play and it inspires you to make a movie, you have to adapt it cinematically. And what Past Lives does is it tells this story cinematically. It's very specific to a particular world. It talks about being between two different worlds, but it also has a universality to it. And I think at heart, all great films have that to some extent. I mean, one of the reasons I'm excited, I'm just gonna keep rambling. One of the reasons I'm excited to be here is that I feel like this place is a place I don't know, and a lot of the people in my life don't know it. And cinema is an opportunity for us to get to know it. And I have for many, many years, more years than I'm going to say out loud, because then it's even more obvious how old I am than my filmography. But I've done what was the foreign language Oscar, now the international Oscar. And the reason is that I'm curious. I'm curious about different worlds. And it was a way for me to see all these different worlds and get to know a little bit about it. And I feel like they've been these opening points. I mean, it's not like you see a movie from someplace and then you know everything about Croatia, but it gives me a sense of what, you know, because people tell stories because that's what they're thinking about in that place. And so I'm really, really interested, and it's been great fun to look at the shorts that I looked at and to see what's people are thinking about here. It's not what is, and I've seen all these different films and they show, you know, it's not one story is not an entire place. You know, it's ridiculous to see something and think, well, everything is, you know, whatever. But I feel like I've gotten a window in, and that's what we're all looking for around the world. And you know, it's the only way. Okay, the times are tough right now out there. You know, it's really challenging in the world, and you know, I know Scorsese said this, we all need to learn about each other in order to humanize things. And I think this is an exciting opportunity to do that. So
That matches what you were just talking about when we were inside about like why making films, why we tell stories,
Yeah.
connect, like and have
Yeah.
a deeper
Yeah.
window to their humanity
Right.
and just to get to know everyone.
But if you make them and they're not good, then nobody's going to see them. So you have to make them good. So you have to, and to make them good, you have to think about how you're making them. Think about how you're telling the story. Think about what's possible for you to do. That's the other thing is, I'm not going to call out any. I'm not going to name names for any examples. But years ago I met this guy who I think is really, really talented special effects guy, and he just the effects were amazing. But the movies never were, so it never got out there. And so I think you have an obligation you have this tremendous opportunity here now where there is interest in doing the work here and hearing these stories. And I'm going to say, have an obligation to try to do the best possible versions of those. And I would say that includes thinking carefully about, who you place in the stories, and are they going to be effectively be able to express what it is you're trying to tell me? Because the better they are, the more people are going to see them all over the place. And getting to the international market is, look, somebody once said to me, and I do deeply believe this, that success is about the opportunity to do more work, right? That's what success really is. It isn't about making a lot of money. It's which can come to it, and that's lovely and all of that, but it's the opportunity to make more work. So it's, in order to be able to do that, think carefully about what's possible. So if you write something that is going to be so fantastical, or it only can star some enormous movie star, that's going to make it more challenging for it to be. And it doesn't mean that there aren't good other stories to be told imaginatively. And again, I point out Past Lives, and there's a lot of other examples of small movies that have imaginatively used the medium to express themselves.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Marjorie, because we're running out of time. I really wanted to ask you all of these amazing questions, but I also want to open the floor for some questions from them. Before we do that, I really have to ask this one last question. What advice would you give, in your diverse film casting experience, what advice would you give filmmakers on their first film? I think that's very important.
Stay open. That's my big piece of advice.
That's amazing. Okay,
Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here today. I'm Mendeli, and I'm a filmmaker and founder of Random Studio. As someone working on a short film, I wanted to know your strategy when you're auditioning actors. What do you usually look for, other than obviously them fitting the role? But what do you usually look for in terms of criteria when casting actors?
In terms of what? Sorry.
What's your criteria, or what do you look for when you're
The
auditioning?
only thing I look for is whether they fit the part. It really, it's the North Star. It's the thing you always have to remember to go back to. And sometimes it's hard because you get distracted. They're charming in the room. They're this, they're that. You gotta stay focused on, are they what I need?
Fit the suit.
Fit the
That's
suit.
the
Fit the
terminology.
suit.
We
Fit
know.
the suit. Do they fit the suit?
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, please go ahead. The mic.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Robin, all the way from South Africa. So I wanted to ask you, I don't know if it's a universal thing, but in South Africa, the arts, it's becoming saturated. And the media, social media is taking over. As a casting director, in South Africa, they cast according to how famous you are. It's not about talent. It's not about because you said that a good script, good actors, it makes a great production. So how do you, if you're in a space and they say that we need to hire X because X is going to bring audiences, but then how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, again, you have to be realistic. So if they need somebody famous? Are you asking me if you're somebody that's wrong for the part but is famous?
Like social media, TikTok.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's the bane of my existence, frankly, right now. Because I'm trying to think of how I can say this.
That's the hard question.
You actually shut me up, right? That's rare, right? If they're really wrong and it's going to ruin your thing, then that's another conversation. If they're not your top choice, but they're more famous than somebody else, then you may need, I think you have to honor people's limitations. Sometimes I believe, there's, again, boy, this is tough to do without naming names. But sometimes there are, if you're a writer or if your writer collaborates and you guys decide you want to do this thing and the only way you're going to get it done is with this TikTok star and they're okay, but they're not great, then you have to adjust your piece to be able to try to use them with those limitations. And if that doesn't work for you, then I say don't, I know it's easy for me to say, don't make it because you can't make it well. But if there's a way that you can adjust it and make it viable, I mean, we all have to be practical about these things these days. And then maybe you surround them, or maybe you can put them in the film but in not the lead role. Or, you kind of have to mix and match that stuff because it's a reality on some level. I don't believe it really translates. I think there are people that have tremendous social media followings and nobody cares that they're in a movie. But I understand that the financiers sometimes do. I know whoever's a financier out there, you're gonna kill me, right?
So we're lucky that you just told us that we actually have more time. So we're gonna get back to the questions, I'm sorry. But yeah, I would love to carry on the conversation. I thought we were running out of time. So again.
Oh, she's gonna jump in now. Come on.
You want to, would you like to continue the question?
I do.
Sure. So please, go ahead, and there is...
Okay, so what your advice would be for new actors, not really new actors, this is a new industry here, but there are lots of actors who have been acting at school theater, for example. And when they go to the producers, directors, writers, or even casting agencies, even though there aren't much, one of the questions they ask, what is your previous work? And you can't tell them, go and ask the school about my theater acting.
Okay.
Especially this is not documented, especially at female schools because it's private. So what is your advice so they can be on the right track? And the second thing, are you here only for the festival or are you doing casting?
I'm here only for the festival. I am not currently doing anything here. But I will say, most of you have one of these of some form or another, right? So you can put yourself, everybody has to start somewhere. So if they're not imaginative enough, whatever. But you can take a scene from something, have a friend. I highly recommend that you do something that is interactive, because when I'm looking at actors, it's not just about when they speak. So I'm not crazy about monologues as audition pieces, because I want to see how you react, because that's important. But you film something of yourself that you can show them, to show them what you can do and what you can do on camera. That's what I would do.
Wonderful.
She asked my question. So
Yeah? Oh, wow, okay.
There you go.
So, Marjorie, so I'd like to continue these questions, or would you like to continue with
Oh, she really wants to think.
I really want to ask, guys, these questions are good.
Okay, if it doesn't hit your, I'm gonna say something that I know I will regret, but I'm happy to answer some of your questions.
Definitely. Let's go. So, I would love to ask, have you ever made a last-minute change to a choice of cast?
No.
Wonderful.
I haven't. I've been lucky enough not to. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but.
Amazing. So,
First of all, once they film, it's over, party over. You're stuck. Then it's the editor's problem, and they let me know about that point.
So I have two other questions that I really would like to ask. One of them is for everyone just to know the process of casting. And this is a very basic question, but we would love for you to take us through these steps. What is the process of casting? If you'd like to speak about it.
I don't know, that's like a whole
Conversation.
hour thing.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, in its most basic level,
Yeah.
you read the script, you talk with, again, it depends on if it's film or TV. TV is a more committee process, film is a more, singular process with a director-producer. And you discuss what they're looking for, you make suggestions of what you see, you try to push the envelope a little in some places if you need to, or maybe you're all in agreement about the type of person. And again, I try not to zero in on, here's a list of 6 people that I think I see in the part. It's like, how do you see the role? We all talk about the character, the suit, if you will, and then I can try to figure out who fits it. But, you're looking for a description of it. And then, depending on if it's a lead role, they usually offer only parts because you're looking for famous people or whatever to get it financed. So, there are exceptions. I just did a movie with an 8-year-old girl, and there were no 8-year-old movie stars, and so we had to find somebody. But for the most part, you're, dealing with offer-only people. And then at the same time, you put, again, depending on where you're shooting, what it's like, where you're looking for these characters, whether you're looking locally, whether you're looking, you have funds to bring them from anywhere. I think I told you my 3-column. When I read a script, I break it into 3 columns. It's just the way my brain works. And so the left-hand column are people that we would, the lead roles, people we would, in essence, bring from anywhere. I would try to convince the producers to pay whatever we need to, not anything, but whatever. The middle column is the toughest column. The middle column are people that we look locally, and if we can't find them locally, and I negotiate this with the producers before we start, those are parts that are key roles that maybe are just a scene or whatever, but they're important enough that you need someone who's really good. And if you can't find them locally, then they agree that we would bring somebody from somewhere else. They're not famous people, they're just really good actors from where we can get them from. And then the third column is one where we've all agreed that they're going to be local, and if they have to dub them later and whatever, we do that. And the director has to agree to shoot it in a way that if we need to do that, we can do that, and then you try to have wonderful faces and local color or whatever, again, it's a very generalized thing. And then you put out casting calls however it works in those different environments, and these days everything comes in initially digitally, and I'm a big fan of the self-tapes. I think it saves everybody a lot of time and energy. I know actors have mixed feelings about this, but I said this earlier to somebody and they were surprised, so I'm gonna say it again out loud, which is, you coming into the room is not going to get you the part necessarily. It isn't about your version. I'm looking at those initial tapes to see if you're talented or not. If you're talented, I can tell you're talented, but identify talent is a good actor. I can't identify that. I can just tell you I know it. If you are talented, everybody's not talented. You can want to be an actor, mean thing I'm going to say, the one cruel thing, you can want to be an actor and maybe not be talented. So if you're talented, just because you want to, just because you study, when somebody says to you, they're serious, they went to school. Well, you can't learn talent. You either have the gift or you don't. School can then enhance it and train you to be more facile with it. But that thing I have that I can, if someone comes to work for me and they can't identify talent, I can't teach them that. If they have that quality, then I can teach them to talk to agents and negotiate deals and talk to directors and all of that. I can't give them that gift. So if you have the talent and you haven't done the right, and you're right for the part, I can see or I think you're going to fit the suit. Then fit the suit. This is going to be the line for the set. And by the way, that comes from my partner, Orly Sidowitz, who I work with on my TV stuff. She was like, fit the suit. Don't fit the suit. If I think you can fit the suit, but I'm not going to be able to sell that audition. I'm not going to be able to show that to my director or showrunner and they're gonna see what I see, because I can see things they can't. That's what I do, right? Then I will get on a Zoom with you or call you and give you notes and work on that scene with you. I spend the time with the people that I think are going to have the opportunity to get the part, but if I don't call you, it doesn't mean you did bad. You might have done it great and perfectly in your initial audition. But then I take that material and I show it to the director, and these days we usually do Zoom callbacks, because we're looking, and the exciting thing about that is that we're looking at people all over the world, all the time, and that's what's fantastic about, everybody thinks it's lazy or it came out of the pandemic. I was doing this for 5 years before the pandemic, because it was just a more interesting way to open it up to other parts of the world, and that's only, increased. And then, the rest of it you won't.
That's wonderful, Marjorie. Thank you for your generosity. I would like to open the floor for questions. Please go ahead. We only have 5 minutes.
Hello, Marjorie. I'm really happy to see you here in Saudi Arabia, and hope you're enjoying your stay here in Saudi Arabia. I am an actor in Saudi Arabia, and I have an issue I face it whenever I go to some auditions. You said a very important note, which is about fitting the character. Sometimes when they give me the script, there are 2 or 3 characters, and I always try to convince the casting director that this one doesn't fit with me, and I really see myself in that one. But most of them, they don't agree with me, or they don't let me have a chance to try the other characters. They ask, or they tell me, you are here just to try this character, and the other characters is already booked for other actors, or you are here just for this one. You can do it or just leave. How can I convince them in a little bit way?
I don't know how to answer that. I really don't know how to. I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that, because they may know something you don't know. You see yourself in that other character, but they may have information you don't have from the director and know what they're looking like, huh?
It's just a try. Try me in other
again, for us, we do self-tape. If you want to send me a tape, you can send me the tape. You can.
I will do.
But
a tape, not just one.
But I know. If as a casting director, put yourself on tape and send it to them if you really believe it, and see if you can change their mind.
Sure. That's
Hope they accept it.
They will.
Okay, we need to talk to my waiver,
Let's go. Could you please give him the mic? Please.
Because I pressed you into service, you get to ask a question.
Yes.
Cats didn't know. Very quickly.
So we saw with Michel Gondry when he was making his film Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind. With Jim Carrey, when he met him in a state where he was going through a lot mentally, and he was like, "You're perfect like that." Same with Darren Aronofsky in The Whale with Brendan Fraser, who was going through a lot, and one of the elements that he chose him because he was going through a lot mentally. As a casting director, do you stay in tune with certain mental issues or mental states with the actors, and then if they fit certain roles so they could weaponize it for the success of the film?
I mean, look, you do know about people's lives, and I read People magazine. I mean, if somebody's going through a divorce, I know that maybe they need money and they'll come to my movie. All of these things, look, it's all a part of it. For sure, you do. I don't know if I like the word weaponize, but you are aware of what's in people's lives, and sometimes, if somebody's. The other thing I'm going to say is that when you're working on a smaller movie, to offer Michelle Rodriguez an action movie, that's not interesting for her. I mean, and I think from her talk, I won't use her as an example, but if you offer somebody a part that's just like the part they're playing in every day in a TV series, they're not going to necessarily be interested in doing that. You need to. I ask myself before I ask anybody sort of famous to do anything, and I ask my producer and director, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, why would they do this? We're doing this little movie, there's not gonna be a lot of money, why would they do this? And got to be for an opportunity to do something they haven't otherwise done. And sometimes, and I will use Val Kilmer in Top Gun as an example. So I had seen him in acting school, and he was very, very serious, and he had done some really interesting work in drama school, which I had seen. And he did something on the Bader-Meinhof gang, you know, I mean, he was like this very serious guy. He comes to Hollywood and he does these comedies, which, by the way, I had never seen, right? So we're casting Top Gun, and I put him on the list. And I talked to the producers about it, and everybody liked the idea. I don't remember if he came, he must have come in an audition. And then the studio wouldn't approve him. And they said, oh, well, he's a comedy actor. And we didn't have videotape then, right? So we weren't videotaping, we just said, they said, oh no, he's a comedy actor, he's done these big comedies. And I went, what? No, I never saw his comedies. I mean, he's the Bader-Meinhof guy, you know, he's like done these really serious, dramatic parts. And it was a big, big argument to get him that part. It was a really big fight. And I can't remember, I don't know if we could get him in again because he did the lead in these 2 movies, and his agent wouldn't let him read again, and we hadn't videotaped anything, we had nothing to show to the studio. It's ridiculous, but yeah.
A fight that's worth.
There were a lot of fights on that one. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's wonderful. I'm sorry, but it's going to be the last question because we only have 10 minutes left. Go ahead.
With the recent ratification of the vote today, my question is a hard one probably, but I was curious, as a casting director, what your take on artificial intelligence is and how AI is going to affect the casting situation.
You know, look, I think the future is yet to see about what AI is. I mean, I have all kinds of sci-fi personal views of what might occur someday in the future, you know, because you're always forever, they're saying, oh, if we could only have a little bit of this guy and a little, these 2 actors put together, you know, I'm thinking someday, but not in my lifetime. And then I think what casting directors we're going to be the ones that go, okay, a little bit of him and a little bit of her together, that'll be the right character. You know, we're going to be about making the mix, because we'll know I don't know. You know, who knows what this is going to be? I mean, what any of this is going to be. I mean, for the moment, so much of the stuff that's, for me, that's in the current character, you know, is stuff that's been around, that we've been doing for an awful long time anyway, right? So it's just codifying things, that trying not to take advantage of them, and I think that's great and all of that. But yeah, no, who knows? You know, and I think I'll be long done and gone by the time it becomes all of that. But you know, whatever.
Marjorie, thank you so much. You've been wonderful. Before you leave, we do have to say one last thing, guys. Today's their birthday. Oh, no.